Hello and welcome to another week of Mind to Mind. My name is Evelyn Jerry and I am from Nairobi, Kenya. I am a mental health practitioner and I'm joined by my friend Dr. Daniel Claiborne.
Hello, glad to be back. I'm Dan Claiborne. I'm a psychologist in Kansas in the United States and love traveling to Africa, to Kenya twice, and really enjoyed that, making friends. And eventually I met Evelyn, and we've decided to do this show on mental health every other week. So I'm really glad that we're getting more viewers, and we would welcome questions. Almost all of our programs will be on a certain topic, and many times we'll have an outline that Evelyn will provide online for that topic. And behind that often is an article that I may have written. And if anybody would like any of those articles, just email me or contact Evelyn, and we'll make sure those get to you. And if you have any questions, you can ask during our program, or you can ask either one of us in the weeks in between the programs. We have our program every other Wednesday. Anyway,
Yeah.
happy to be back.
So if you'd like to view our outline that we'll be using tonight, you can check any of the channels that you're watching us from. That is on YouTube. You can find it on the description. You can find it on the feed on Facebook. You can also find it on the feed on LinkedIn and also on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us. And today's topic, based on so many conversations I've had in the past 2 weeks, I just felt like we had to speak about this. It's all about toxic relationships. And when we talk about toxic relationships, that's more not just personal relationships or romantic relationships. We are talking about also um, work relationships, and that could be your friendships as well. And feel free to ask as many questions as you can, and we'll be able to share with our viewers live. So, yeah, take it away, Dr. Daniel Claiborne. I'm really excited about this topic.
Uh, well, I agree with you that maybe a lot of the things we talk about will have to do with really intimate relationships, but it could affect, our friendship could be toxic, or a relationship with a supervisor or a boss at work or a coworker, um, a relationship with a particular parent could be toxic in some cases. And so I was thinking about our outline, and I thought of three major things. I guess what we're talking about today is, how do we know if a relationship is toxic, and what are the elements of the ways it can be toxic? And I think the three big categories are: if we feel abused in any way, or if we feel disrespected in any way, or if we feel suppressed and controlled. So we can't be ourselves, can't be free to be ourselves. Those are our maybe three themes, but there are many different examples, and we can go through some of those and talk about what that would look like.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the very first one I started with was simply if we don't feel like the other person likes us, or we don't like the other person. It seems so simple, but
Mm-hmm.
in most relationships, we can find something about the other person we like, and they find something about us they like. But if we have a relationship that doesn't have any liking in it, which happens sometimes, that would be a sign to look for, something not to put up with.
Yeah. Especially if you feel like you can't be yourself with this person, You have to pretend to be someone you're not so that they can like you. If you find yourself changing who you are around them, then at that point, that should be an indication that this person is not, I don't know, is toxic. Yeah.
Sometimes we first notice something toxic by something the other person does. But Evelyn, you're very correct. Sometimes we know it by our own feeling. We don't know what they're doing to create that feeling exactly, maybe, but we know we feel it, like not able to be free, to be ourselves. That's a very good one, where we have to monitor what we're doing and make sure we always come across a certain way to make sure that other person approves of us. This might be one that affects our relationship with parents quite often, or bosses, but it could be a romantic partner also.
Yeah. It's so unfortunate that sometimes I think the whole people pleasing habit starts especially when a child is trying to get the attention of the parent. They feel like they need to perform in a certain way to become a certain person so that they can gain some sort of attention or admiration from their parents, and they are in constant pressure to be a certain way, be good, like just maybe perform highly in school, or join a sport and be the best. And they become highly competitive because they have something they need. They're trying to get the attention of a parent or something like that.
Hmm.
And that holds, and most often than not, this behavior continues because they never end up getting that whatever they're looking for from their parents. And it's so unfortunate that it ends up being reciprocated when they are with now like other like friendships, when they're trying to gain the attention of their friends, as well as while they're in school, from their teachers. And it also boils down even when they are older, when they are at their workspace as well, and also with let's say with their friends. And it's so even romantic relationships, so you attract someone who maybe will praise you for a small thing for the first few minutes, and that will keep you interested for a while. That will keep you interested in them because you keep on seeking validation from these people.
Hmm. I think this is a complicated one because sometimes we are attracted to somebody not for who they really are, but for
Mhm.
who we think they could be. And then
Yeah.
that's not a good basis to start a relationship. But
Mhm.
we often all do it. I mean, it's very possible. I know I've done it, and where we can see the potential in another person, and we want to bring that out, and
Yeah.
we really are attracted to what we think they could potentially be, but not to
Mhm.
who they really are. And
Yeah.
that's something we all should watch for as we get into a personal relationship or a work relationship. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it is a complicated one.
Yeah, it is because oh, just a minute. Can you hear the noise? I'm sorry. So this is really complicated because especially at work, you either know how to do the job or you don't. And people do not pay potential. Like there's a saying we say here in Kenya, like um your boss will not pay you for your potential to do the job. They will pay you because you can actually do the job. And even if they hire you without the skill, if they train you, you have to prove that you can do it within the next 3 months. So
Hmm.
if you can't do it, and that's what's called a probation period, if you cannot do the work within the next 3 months, then it means that they will have to look for someone else. They can't continue paying you because you're you're doing the job, because you have the potential to do the job. Same thing to relationships. I don't know why we date people because they have the potential to be an awesome person, as an awesome boyfriend or an awesome girlfriend or an awesome dad, and they haven't proved that they are a good partner. If they do not have the capacity to become a good partner, you cannot date their potential to be a good partner. And I think maybe a, a lot of it is maybe drawn from as maybe one encounter with them. You have a conversation with someone, and maybe from how they're speaking, they have the potential, like based on how they're speaking, they sound like they have the potential of becoming a good person. But the more you interact with them, you realize they actually want to be that person, but they are not that person. So they are constantly trying to be this, they are constantly speaking about it, but their actions are completely opposite of the person they want to be. And you cannot date what they talk about. You have to look at the actions of the person and go ahead and judge them based on who they truly are, and they are what they do.
Uh-huh. I think that's what you made me think of, Evelyn, there is that as we talk about what toxic relationships are like, we're kind of
Hmm.
thinking about the other person being toxic. But we also
Yeah.
have to watch, we could be toxic. If we,
Hmm.
let's say we hire someone, or we are dating someone, and they don't, they're not coming through the way we hoped and the way that we want,
Hmm.
we can't just be punitive and demanding and controlling and critical. And at some point, we have to think, let's let this relationship go and
Yeah.
find a different one, because otherwise we can be toxic too. I'm glad
Yeah.
you reminded me of that. One other
Yeah.
one
And
thing
that's
that
a,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, and that's a really huge one, because if you have an expectation about this relationship, or and how, I think, let me explain it this way, because I think I have actually really fallen. I think I'm so guilty of this. Like one time in my life, I have done this where you meet somebody and then you have an expectation of the kind of relationship you guys will build together. Not just relationship, even friendships. Like you have an idea of the kind of friendship you want to have with this person. They prove to you on occasional times that they have, like, they're far away from the kind of expectations you have in your mind about them, and then you're trying so hard to make it work that you're completely pushing this person away from you, because you're making them, it's like you're trying to control them to turn to become this person that you've built up in your mind, which will never happen.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
I think.
along those lines of expectations, some people think that when you first meet someone, or you have your first date, or your first interview, or that's the time to be the most honest about expectations. Because if you wait longer and you're
Mhm.
already emotionally involved with the person, then you may not want to be so honest.
Yeah.
So expectations, yes, you're right. Um,
Yeah.
it's good to
And
share those.
yeah, and I think the most important wisdom that my mom actually gave me, and I was speaking about it today, is that she told me that it doesn't matter what situation you are in, always be yourself, because if you pretend to be someone you're not just to please people, they will build an expectation of you being that for the rest
Right.
of interaction. So if you're not able to maintain whoever you presented to these people, it's going to get to a point where they start getting frustrated and disappointed with you because you cannot keep up. Then again, they will like you for not being yourself for someone that you're not. So when they realize that you're different, it creates, you also attract like people who are not real because you were not real in the first place.
Hmm.
So it is important for you to be yourself at all circumstances, so that like if someone likes you, they like you for who you are, and if they don't like you, they will, you will know that they don't like who you are, and you
Hmm.
can't do anything about it. You can't pretend to be anyone else. So if they don't like you, at least you will know where you stand with this person.
Hmm.
Mm.
I was thinking of one of my therapy clients years ago, an older woman, and she came regularly for therapy, but we never really talked about any particular problems. And so one day I asked her, "What are you getting out of our therapy?" And she
Mhm.
said, "When I'm here, I feel like I am being heard." And that's
Wow.
very important. And so that's another thing on our outline, that if you're in a relationship and you are trying to be yourself and to be, share your expectations and take some risks, but you feel the other person is not listening, is not hearing you,
Mhm.
that's a sign that the relationship might be toxic to stay in. Now, we aren't heard all the time, every moment, but I mean, if on the important things you're feeling never heard or honored for being the person you are, that's that's a warning sign that we have to
Yeah.
pay attention to.
Yeah. I
You
think on the opposite side, like on the opposite of you being like expecting to be heard all the time, it's also important to realize the person you're trying to talk to, are they in a position to hear you?
hmm.
Like it's always important to also be aware of what circumstances are surrounding the person you're trying to talk to. Because if this person is under pressure from work, and maybe there's a lot happening in their lives, and you just want to be heard and understood all the time, and they don't have the capacity to hear you. Let's say they are at 20% at this point, and you're also at 20%, and you need them to come through for you, but they're not in a position to, because they also do not have the capacity to be there for you.
Well,
Having the
when
that,
we did our program on fair fighting,
mhm,
arguing, one of the
yeah,
points we made then was when two people have something that they need to discuss, to pick a time in the future that both people will be ready for that. So if you,
yeah,
like Evelyn is saying, if you, one person forces that discussion, but the other
yeah, that
person isn't ready or available, it won't go well.
yeah. So you're trying to force a situation like someone to listen to you, and they don't have the capacity to listen to you, then that's a toxic trait.
Hmm.
It is important, because what you're doing right there is that you can even, instead of getting helped or even having a productive conversation, you might end up triggering this person to react in a way that or they will even hear the wrong thing, have the wrong perception about the whole situation, end up creating a fight that wouldn't have happened if you had the discussion at the right time. So sometimes
We can
sometimes
always ask, is this a good time?
yeah.
Just and when something's important, and just
Mhm.
up front ask, is this a good time, or when would be a good time? I really have something I need to share with you.
Yeah. Dr. Claiborne, may I ask you a question?
Uh-huh.
Do you think it's a toxic trait to lack the patience to wait until it's the right time?
Uh, is it toxic
Like to
to
lack the patience to wait until it's the right time to have the conversation? Because there are some people who will just keep talking they until they have completed to vent, without any regard for the other person and
Mhm.
how they're feeling at the moment.
Well, that's a tricky one, because if the person is venting, some people vent as they're thinking about what their feelings are, so they're not sure when they start talking. So they need to talk for a while and vent for a while to find out what it is they're really trying to express. So I don't think we should, if we have the time, I don't think we should interrupt or get in their way if they're moving toward something deeper and more genuine. Um,
And
but
my
if they're just
question is,
repeating something over and over and not getting anywhere, then I think
Mhm.
it's good to take a break or interrupt.
But my question is like, is it toxic for someone to keep speaking, especially when the partner has already expressed that it's not a good time?
Oh
They
yes,
continue talking
yes, I
about
think
the lack of patience to
right.
wait, because there's some who don't have the patience.
That's a good point, and that happens sometimes. One person will indicate this isn't a good time for me. I'm tired, or but if the other person persists and keeps, well, that would be a toxic element. Yes,
Mm,
and it's not going to end very well because the
yeah.
person who's talking isn't going to get what they want
Mhm.
if the other person isn't really available. Um, another element we might want to talk about is honesty. If we're honest with our partner or our boss or our friend or our parent, and they have trouble accepting our honesty, or they reply, but their reply is not truthful or honest, that's a
Mhm.
toxic situation.
Yeah.
And
There are
honesty
people.
doesn't necessarily mean we have to share everything, but what we
Mhm.
do share should be honest. So we don't
Yeah.
have to be totally open, but when we do open up about something, it should be the best we can do to be accurate and truthful and expect the other person to be able to be the same way.
Yeah. I think it's really important to also, I think also being able, like, being able to create a safe environment for someone to speak their truth as well.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah. So if you
It's
don't,
almost like being free to be who you really are. Uh-huh.
if something, if you have a negative thing to say and you don't have a safe environment, like if you want to deliver bad news and you don't have a safe environment to speak about it, because the person will react in a bad way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Um, One of the things we talked about earlier was like feeling disrespected. And
Yeah.
I guess an example of that would be where you make your needs or your wishes known,
Mhm.
or you share something about who you are, and the other person is, belittling or just ignores it, doesn't,
Yeah.
there are various different ways of being disrespectful. Um, but that to me is one of the most important things about a good relationship is having mutual respect. So when one person expresses something, the other person hears it, remembers it, honors it, abides
Mhm.
by it if possible. Um, so I think that issue of respect, it may be one of the first things you notice. Let's say you take ideas to your supervisor and they're never appreciated.
Yeah.
Um, that would be a sign. Or you make clear to your partner how you would like to handle making love or handle a certain household chore, and the person
Mhm.
just ignores that and
Yeah.
doesn't abide by it or appreciate it at all. That would
Mhm.
be a red flag, I think.
Yeah, or making it seem like whatever they say is more important than what you say.
Ah, yes, some people have such a need to be important that they
Mhm.
just have to make sure every opinion they have is better than your opinion, and
Yeah.
every idea is better than your idea.
Mm-hmm.
and every plan is better than your plan.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
a good example.
I think one of the other things that actually popped up was when you are constantly feeling like your self-esteem is going down because this person is is consistently belittling you in every circumstance. For example, if you're in a group setting and people are contributing to a certain topic and you come up with an idea to contribute to the topic,
Mhm.
but your partner is like under the table pinching you to shut up and or whispering to you, you need to keep quiet, you don't have any meaningful to talk about, like why you, like when, who told you to talk, like, are you trying to embarrass me? Like they don't allow you to be yourself even in front of a group of people, and they make you feel like anything you have to say is nothing, and it's illiterate, you have nothing of importance to contribute to this conversation. So I would really prefer if you really do not talk at this
Mhm.
particular moment. I think little things like that, they keep on bringing you down. Or even if you were like, this is for friendships. This is a good one because it has happened to me. Like, you come into a room full of your friends, but there's this one person who will look at you from head to toe and realize that maybe like your trouser has uh one of your strings is pulled out from your trouser, and that is the one thing they will see. But they will not see how smart you look or how beautiful you look today. They will not compliment you. They will look at, like, you don't know how to mend your trouser. Did you notice you have a hole in your pants or something like that? Like, they will look for anything wrong with you
Uh-huh.
so that they can point it out to remind you that, hey, you ain't all that, you aren't perfect. And a lot of people go through such friendships and they think that it is normal. They think that this person is just trying to, they're just being real, they're just being your friend, like they're telling you they don't want you to be embarrassed. But if it's so constant where this friend of yours will never tell you, hey, you look beautiful today, or you look nice, or hey, you gave a very good speech, they will talk about how you mispronounced a word, like
Mhm.
instead, ama, you didn't, or you did not, you don't seem like you actually did your research in that speech. Like, are you really sure you know much about that topic? Or maybe like they will point out one point where you said the wrong thing, or you were not so sure about something. They'll tell you, don't you think it was embarrassing for you to have mentioned something you didn't research about? They will be mentioning those tiny things and they seem so small, but they will keep on lowering your confidence over
This
and
is yeah, this is something I think as parents and as teachers we need to be especially aware of, because it's easy for parents and teachers to want to keep improving a person. So
yeah.
no matter how well they're doing, if we're not careful as a parent, we keep focusing on the parts that still need improvement, and
Mm-hmm.
that can be overdone. And
Yeah.
so I had to learn myself when I was supervising new therapists and I was listening to the tape recordings of their sessions, that
Mhm.
I had to, it was easy for me to see the mistakes and things
Yeah.
that should have been done differently. But I also had to make an effort to look for the things that were done correctly and done well, to make sure that those were addressed too. And so if you're with somebody in a relationship that's highly critical, like Evelyn is saying, and then nothing is good enough, and they always have to be pointing out even the smallest things, and well, that would be a good example of a toxic
Yeah.
relationship, I think.
Yeah.
One other
Constant.
comes in here too is if you have you notice something being toxic and you mention it to your partner or your boss, and they can hear you and make adjustments, that's a good sign. So
Yeah.
partly another thing about a toxic relationship is one where the other person will not accept feedback.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that would be another example where you try to give feedback and how you feel and your reactions, and they don't take that into account. They
Mm-hmm.
never really hear it. That would be something else that's
Yeah.
toxic.
Mm-hmm.
I guess some
It,
of these things are we're saying we want to be heard, we want to
yeah.
be respected.
Yeah.
Uh, Also, I think the other thing
I
we're implying
see
is
that.
we want the relationship to be kind of mutual and kind of equal and kind of we don't want one person to be overly powerful, out of
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah. I have actually experienced something like, oh my gosh, I think I have so many examples about toxic relationships. No, this happened in the workplace. So I had this supervisor who was really really toxic, and she tried to control and manipulate, and like constant belittling and criticism. Like it used to happen so constantly, like, and also she didn't want to teach me the job. So when when so that I could get in trouble, with my boss. And it ended up happening. So by the time I was realizing that there's some work that I actually should have learned, because I was new at like in law and everything. And by the time I was realizing that like this lady, what she was doing to me, it was really too late, because I had even started getting sick and everything. So when I managed to get the courage to actually like report her to my boss, and I said everything that was going on, because like I was at the verge of losing my job because of the things that she hadn't taught me and everything. So I had to completely like like put it out there what was really going on.
Mhm.
So afterwards, because now she was given a warning and she had to teach me and we had to continue working together and everything. So what happened afterwards is that, like, she used to do this thing where she's like, let me teach you, because I don't want you to say that I'm harassing you. I don't want you to, like, she will, I don't know what is it called. Like now she'll use that information against you and constantly remind you that you said I did this. I don't want you. Do you think I am a bad person? Like I don't know how to explain what that is. Is that they got feedback of what they were doing was wrong.
Mhm.
Instead of apologizing and actually correcting their work and correcting their bad behavior, they continued doing it, and then now they're like, I don't want to correct you because you'll say that I'm harassing you.
Yeah,
I don't want to do this. It's like some sort of manipulation, but at the same time, it's like they are making you feel guilty for calling them out on their bad behavior.
I think that's another good way to look at something that as toxic is when there is feedback or correct information or helpful suggestions, and the other person not only doesn't follow them, but uses them against you. Um,
Yeah,
yes,
I've
you
remembered what
mentioned
is it.
manipulated. And I think that's another thing. When we're in a relationship and we feel in any way manipulated or controlled or something dishonest is going on that hurts us, yes,
Mhm.
that's toxic.
I think it's called gaslighting. It's called gaslighting, even in relationships, where you tell your partner that, hey, I don't like it when you do this. It actually hurts my feelings. And then they'll use that information to turn it against you and make you the problem.
Hmm.
Like you're the problem. You're the sensitive one. You're the
Right.
one who can handle this. You're the weak one. You're the one who doesn't have the strength to handle this situation. Like they will make it that you're
Yeah, I
the
think
problem
that's
and they are okay.
right.
Yeah.
That would be a good sign. I'm glad that you brought that up because when we know where we have a legitimate point to make and we make it, and
Hmm.
maybe even other people have confirmed it. We've checked it with our other colleagues or our friends. Bring it up,
Hmm.
and then we are made to look like the problem.
Hmm.
That's that really feels terrible, and it's a sign of a toxic person. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, now that's a really good example.
Yeah.
And
And also,
it is manipulative, like you
mhm,
mentioned too, where we're being dealt with in a dishonest and manipulative way. Plus, it means the other person is not going to change,
yeah,
really. And we gave them a chance by giving feedback or making a complaint, but
mhm,
they came back at us this way, meaning they're not going to really change.
yeah. What do you think of this one when your partner, or let's say even in a working environment where someone tries to sabotage you because you seem to be succeeding more than them? There are partners even in romantic relationships where they do not like the fact that you're getting a better job than them, you're earning more money, or even friends who realize that, hey, you have a nice boyfriend, you have a nice job, you live in a nice apartment. So they will find something in your life that maybe is not perfect and try and sabotage you so that you can fail
Mhm.
in one way or the other.
Yeah, I think normally people who find out that we have a good job or something is going well in our lives, normally they're happy for us and they
Yeah.
don't take it away. One of the most common ways that we get sabotaged at work is by a supervisor not telling us information we need to know. And
Mm-hmm.
so we struggle and we flounder and we make mistakes. And they could have told us this information, but they held it back as a
Yeah.
way of not keeping us from looking good, keeping us from succeeding. I've seen
Yeah.
that in very high levels in organizations where, let's say, a new manager is hired, or a new
Mm-hmm.
chief of police, or a new administrator. And one of the other administrators, instead of sharing helpful information, insider information that would help that person succeed, they hold it back and the person struggles because they
Mm-hmm.
didn't know information that they could have known. That's a
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah. And sometimes they will even give you the information, but they will make sure like it's stuck inside different piles of work that it will be so hard for you to even trace it. So
Mhm.
that when you say that they never give you the information, they'll be like, I did give you the information, but they made sure that it was so hard for you to see it, so that it's not traced back to them. And I think
Mhm.
that's what my supervisor was doing at that point, because she withheld information that she was supposed to train me on. And it actually got me into trouble. And what she didn't realize is that it actually ended up getting her into more trouble because she didn't teach me. And at the same time, the harassment claim also came up.
Let's talk about another one that I think is very important. It's
Mhm.
related to honesty. It's when the other person is disloyal and violates an understanding that you've had. It could
Yeah.
be a personal relationship, like if somebody has an affair with someone, but it could be at work too, where um, there's an understanding between you and a coworker, and that person violates it and
Mhm.
doesn't follow the understanding. Anyway, when you find out the other person is disloyal or does something in secret to harm you, and it's repetitive, especially,
Yeah.
that would be an example of a toxic situation.
Yeah. I think I've met I've heard about it so much, when especially in business where someone hires people, they are supposed to do a certain job for them. They have an agreement about like even how much they're going to pay and all that. And maybe it's not a huge job that requires a contract or anything. And people do their part, they finish the job, and once the project is done, they don't want to pay for the
Hmm.
work, and they don't want to keep the end of the bargain. And that really really, I think to me that is one of the toxic traits.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we feel betrayed or hurt by somebody doing something behind our back, it's really hard for a relationship to recover from that. For example, when in a personal relationship when someone has an affair with someone else. It's very hard to regain the trust. It's
Mhm.
possible over with help and with time, but that makes it very difficult, because then
Yeah.
it also raises the question, what else don't I know
Mhm.
about that person's behavior? Yeah.
Yeah. I think I can't hear you really well. I need to log out and join back in. Just give me a
All right.
minute.
Let's take a very brief break, and Evelyn will come right back. Sometimes there's a technical issue with the sound, and if she comes back, then that works out well. I think that was triggered by her phone ringing, and that happens also to me sometimes. Welcome back, Evelyn.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, I can hear you well. What
Okay.
about a situation where, in any kind of relationship, where the other person isn't taking their responsibility, their share, or they've agreed to something but they don't do it, where they're
Yeah.
not responsible? And I don't mean just occasionally or on something small, but
Mhm.
on things that are larger and more major and frequent. What about
Yeah.
that as being toxic?
Yeah. I think that I think that would qualify as a toxic trait,
Hmm.
because it means that this person is not willing to do their part.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, any relationship is a little bit like an agreement or a
Mhm.
contract or an understanding that two people have with each other.
Mhm.
And if they honor it and they both do their share and they are honest with each other and they renegotiate the contract occasionally, and then it goes well. But when
Mhm.
one person is continually not following what they should be doing, or if a problem happens and it's the other person's fault, but they don't take responsibility for it
Yeah.
and they blame the other person,
Mhm.
that would be somewhat toxic, I think.
Yeah. Lack of accountability.
Hmm. Actually, that's a good word. Yes, right.
Mm.
If I'm in a relationship with you, whether it's personal or business or family or whatever it is, there's sort of an
Mhm.
understanding that whatever I commit to, I will do it, and I
Yeah.
will be accountable, and I'm assuming you will also, and unless something prevents it. But
Yeah.
yes.
I think I've actually like recently helped out someone in a business situation where they had an agreement with a supplier who was supposed to supply some items for an event, and last minute this person cannot be reached, and they are not responding, they do not communicate to this person and leaves this person completely hanging,
Hmm.
and they have to do the best that they can. They try and they actually reached out to our company so that we could help out with the situation. And one of the things she actually mentioned was that when she was planning with this person was constantly rude. And at one point, like the person told her that this event of yours is not gonna work out. It's gonna fail. Like, first of all, the person is rude. They are constantly pessimistic. And then at the last minute, it's like they wanted to make sure that this event failed.
Hmm.
And like, I think when it comes to business, it's usually more of a good faith situation where I you've said you're going to provide this and I'm going to pay for this service. So you not showing up and not picking calls or even communicating before time or even receiving calls at all that you're not and saying that you're not going to be able to make it and to provide this service. I think that's a really that's a toxic trait
Hmm.
where someone is relying on you to do your part, but you do not do your part and you're also not communicating that you're not able to do it so that the person can have enough time to reorganize themselves.
Yeah.
I think that's a really bad trait.
Hmm. You made me think of something too, Evelyn. You used the word rude. And one
Mhm.
area we haven't talked about completely is kind of obvious, but when you're in a relationship and the other person is openly belittling you or
Mhm.
disparaging you, whether it's your interests or what your goals are or your personality and where they're just out very openly putting you down and making fun of you or ignoring some
Mhm.
part of something important to you. I mean, I guess those are obvious things, but definitely we would think of those as toxic. uh,
Yeah.
in interestingly, the research on people's relationships, romantic ones, marriages, shows that one of the most important ingredients is that the two people have some interests in common. They don't have to
Mhm.
have all of their interests in common, but if
Yeah.
they have no interests in common, the
Mhm.
prediction of future health and happiness and the marriage staying together is poor.
Mhm.
So that also then means each person has their interests, and that the other person ought to, maybe they're interested in some of the same things, but even if not, they ought to respect the interests of the other person. And it could be whether it's reading or travel or
Yeah.
exercise or whatever, music or whatever it is that other person has as interests. The partner should not be critical or disparaging or
Mhm.
minimizing or ridiculing that person's interests.
Yeah. Like even allowing them to be themselves, regardless of whether you're interested in what they're doing or not.
Oh, mhm,
Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's hard for us to understand the interests of the other person. Like
Mm.
they may like a certain kind of music that we can't stand or identify with, or
Yeah.
a certain hobby, or um, but in the big picture, that's who they are,
Yeah.
and we need to. We're hoping that they will respect our interests. So
Mm-hmm.
we need to. It needs to be mutual. Um,
Yeah. Do you
yeah.
think that it is important, especially like on the healthy side, like if you're healthy, I think it's really important, like even though you're not interested in what they're doing, like at least I don't know, like try and show interest to try and understand what it is they're doing. Also, maybe you can try experience it once. If you really don't like it, you can allow them and give them the space to continue doing it without you. But at least, like show some sort of interest, being being interested in what they're doing. And then afterwards, if you really don't feel like you want to participate in it, that's all right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are just so controlling that they just have to, and we've talked about this several times already, but that they just have to be dominant and be
Mm-hmm.
right and be in charge and
Yeah.
make all the plans and have things be just exactly the way they want it to be. And um, they that tends to be toxic for most of us.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any
Yeah.
questions that
So
have come up?
they will even tell you to stop.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what you're doing. You need to stop. Like, just because they don't like it, like that means that you should stop. And I think that's also a toxic trait.
Uh-huh. Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
You should be
Did,
able to continue with what you're doing, whether someone likes it or not.
uh-huh. Oh, yes. Unless it's really a problem and it's destructive, like Yeah, that wouldn't mean that you can use drugs or drink
Mm-hmm.
excessively or um, cheat on your taxes, or I mean, we're not talking about things like that, but
Mm-hmm.
interests that are benign and
Yeah.
harmless. Um,
Mm-hmm.
have anybody asked any questions during our program yet?
I haven't seen any question, but I've seen someone has liked on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Definitely, we encourage questions, and also we encourage topics. Each
Mm-hmm.
week between our meetings, Evelyn and I talk about new topics that we might have for the next meeting. And
Mm-hmm.
but we'd very much be interested if anybody out there has ideas to of their own.
Yeah.
Is there anything, Evelyn, that you wanted to mention about toxic relationships that we may not have touched on?
I think just to continue with what you're saying, like for example, if your partner is interested in something you don't like, or let's say they're interested in dancing,
Uh-huh.
they love dancing. Maybe they're not really good at it, but they do love it. They love how it makes them feel, like
Yeah.
it's a good exercise and all that. And just because you don't like it, I think one of the toxic traits would be trying to shame your partner out of it. Say
Right.
like, "Ah, you're such a terrible dancer." Like I think even if you actually take 120 dance lessons, you'll still never get it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, one
Trying.
thing we're talking about is kind of the values we have, and that also kind of reflects our background and our
Mm-hmm.
culture. So, our family and our traditions. And so we come into a new relationship and we have different backgrounds and different cultures and or family traditions. And so if we are too rigid
Mm-hmm.
about our own background being the right one,
Mm-hmm.
that could be toxic.
Yeah. I think I've remembered another toxic trait that I have noticed. Um, People who like to be listened to, but they do not listen to anyone else.
Hmm.
Like they like it when all of you keep quiet. Let me talk. I am talking about this. I have interesting topics. I'm talking about my work, about this. I was fabulous at this, and it's always about them. But when you are
You
talking,
know what, Evelyn, you know what we call those people? We
what
call
do we
them men.
call?
We call them men.
You had it here, guys. I didn't say it. I didn't say it. I
I'm
am.
teasing.
I did not say it. I don't want toxic masculinity guys to come for me. But yeah,
Well, but,
you have it here.
it is true that women are socialized to be more sensitive to social situations and to
Yeah,
listen more. And a lot of us guys are socialized to try to be smart and right and in
yeah,
control and have good opinions. And so if you see two men talking to each other about a problem,
mm-hmm,
it's perfectly all right for one of them to interrupt the other person and
hmm,
give a solution.
hmm,
But if you hear two women talking about a problem, very often they're doing a lot of listening back and
hmm,
forth. They're not necessarily telling each other what to do.
yeah,
So anyway, I'm partly teasing, but in a way, men have a little more trouble changing that tendency of interrupting and being right and talking too much, and they have a little more trouble with that. They're somewhat socialized to be competitive that way and to be
yeah. You
overbearing.
you could actually spend a whole hour listening to someone speaking about their day and all that, and when it's your turn to speak, they get something to do. They are busy. Oh
Huh?
my God, to check their messages and all that. And unfortunately, I think why I think this is a toxic trait is because something, whatever they may be saying might be important, and you will miss it,
Uh-huh.
and you may not be able to actually come through for
Yeah.
them. They might need you, but you're not interested in listening to them. It's all about you, and you're not interested in the other person and what they would like. And I find that very apathetic. Like, you don't have any kind of empathy towards what someone else may need. You only think about what you want and what you need.
hmm One thing when we train executives in companies, people who are in charge of a team, we train them when they're having a discussion with their team about an issue. We train the leader not to talk first, to let everyone else share their opinions and views and suggestions, and then the leader can talk. Because if the leader goes first, half of the people on the team won't say anything.
Yeah.
And the leader might also miss something that if he lets all the other people on the team contribute first, the leader might hear something that he or she hadn't thought of. And
Hmm.
so that's another element in businesses where we train leaders to get other people's input first.
Yeah, and it also beats the point of a brainstorming session, and also gives you a chance to even realize that, or even learn the kind of team that you have. You will learn whether your team is strong or not, whether
hmm
you need
Right.
some changes. Like, it actually makes you a better leader that way. Because at the end
hmm
of the day, what makes you a good leader is the productivity of your team. And if you're not able to listen to your um to your team members, you're not able to lead them.
And I think
Yeah.
that's true in a one-on-one relationship too. We want to bring out the best in our partner. We want
Hmm.
to find out what they know and
Yeah.
why they think what they think and how they
Hmm.
feel and why they feel that way. And if we ignore and talk over them, we will miss that information. We won't
Yeah.
really know them or what their ideas might have been. Yes, we miss something that way.
Yeah, you might actually even end up having an assumption about them, and also judging them in the wrong way, and like making decisions based on your assumptions, and you end up messing like um a lot.
And we mentioned a minute ago toxic masculinity, and we might do a program on that. But I want to say something that are traits people have that we think of as masculine, like being competitive and aggressive. But there are traits that women have that we think of as female. We all have all of these traits, so it's not really men and women. But
Yeah.
either side can be toxic. Like an
Mhm.
example of toxic masculinity would be somebody who always has to win every argument, every. But a toxic femininity trait would be someone who always gives up to the other
Mhm.
person. So
Yeah.
it isn't just that masculinity can be toxic, femininity can be toxic also. And maybe we'll have a program on these topics.
I
Um,
think that is interesting.
mm,
That
yeah,
is really interesting. I think we should follow it up with the next session. We can do toxic masculinity, and then we do toxic femininity next.
uh-huh. I think that
Yeah.
would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Once again, to all of us, all of you who are watching, we really appreciate it. And give us feedback. Let us know things you're interested in or other
Mhm.
follow up questions you might have.
Yeah. And anything you may feel like we have missed or we haven't discussed, you can leave a comment down below
Uh-huh.
on the comment section on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and we will find a way to discuss it in our next session.
Yeah.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Daniel Claiborne, for
Thanks,
your
Evelyn.
insight. Yeah.
Thanks, Evelyn, for your examples. And you really bring things to life, which is what we're trying to do. So
Yeah.
look forward to our next meeting.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely night. This has been amazing.
You too.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, guys. Love you. Bye bye.